And good evening, Sword family. Thank you. Thank you. See, I remembered. I'll remember probably about 40% of the time, but I remember tonight. So tonight will be our third evening speaking about a female Chinese folk hero. I finally figured out the order. Well, if you're going to say hi, come on over here. Come on. Come on. Up, up, up. There's the co-host. There's the puppy co-host. Right there. She's a little pupper. Now, I haven't 100% decided, one, if I'm even going to have a stream next week, because it will be, quote unquote, Thanksgiving weekend. Yes, Thanksgiving. That's what I'm going to call it now. Thornsgiving. Thornsgorving. That's what it is. Since it will be Thornsgorving weekend, I haven't decided if I'm even going to have a stream. Of course, it will be, 2 days after Thornsgorving, which means you have Thornsgorving and you stuff yourself stupid. Then you have Friday where you recover from stuffing yourself stupid. And then Saturday, maybe by, 2 days after the event, people will have their brains back from stuffing themselves with everything and anything under the sun. But if I have a stream next week, I am going to open things up to my patrons over on Patreon. You guys, once I get done here today, the people who are on Patreon, I want you to go over to Patreon, and I want each of you, all 5 of you, to pick a female Chinese historical figure, and I want you to send me a message with that person's name, or whatever you can find out about them. And then once I have, once I have all 5 or whatever, I'm going to put up a poll Monday or Tuesday night, and I want all of you to vote on who you think I should do for the last show of this month. So if one person doesn't get enough votes out of the 4 or 5 of them, then I might just do a show on all of the ones that are suggested by the patrons. This is, of course, the benefit of being on the Patreon. You get to help me choose when I don't have a specific topic in mind. I will go to Patreon and I will pick from there. Now, this last Wednesday, I did hear a name from Rich, but that particular person I would not consider to be a folk hero, but I have added her name to my Google Docs list for future Teahouse shows. He mentioned Ming Na Wen, who is a very, very beautiful Chinese actress that you may know from voicing Mulan in the Disney movie, Melinda May from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think she was in the Joy Luck Club, but I highly doubt anybody here has seen that movie. But I would not consider her to be a folk hero, So that's probably not going to be the choice for next week, but it is on the list for a future show. So again, my 5 patrons: Carl, Dan, Rich, who hardly ever shows up here, but I might send him a message later, and then Joe and Trey. I want you guys, after we're done here, go to Patreon and give me a suggestion. And then we'll do a poll, and if nobody gets enough votes, then maybe I'll just do a show on all of them. If you don't have any particular favorite female Chinese folk heroes, look some up. There are some interesting people out there that I haven't even covered. You can go back and rewatch my Teahouse from like a month or two ago when I talked about Wu Zetian and Neng Wei. You know, you can go back and rewatch that one and get some ideas from that. It's all, I'm trying to do this to help spread knowledge and spread awareness on some people that the people in my audience, people in the chat, possibly have never heard of. But I also want to give something back to my wonderful, wonderful patrons. So anytime, and this is going to be going forward, you know, anytime a patron has an idea for a show, something that they want to see me talk about, you can send me a message on Patreon. You can send me a message on Facebook. You can send me a message on Threads. You can send me a message on Instagram. You can send me a message just about anywhere but, you know, TikTok, because that's brain rot garbage. But if you have something that you want to see me talk about, please send me a message. I will, if it's something that I'm fairly well versed in, then that's good. If it's not something I'm well versed in, I will look it up. I will do research. I still have to do a show for Dan that he suggested probably over a year ago on wanting to see the progression of Chinese military armor. That's definitely something that I am very, very interested in doing. And I might actually even do that in December, because that seems like something that would be fun to talk about. Just like when I did the 2 different shows on Chinese clothing. You know, we had to break it up into 2 separate shows because the ancient clothing was so vast that I was not even able to get to modern clothing before we had to end the show. So we had to do modern clothing in the second half. So Dan, I absolutely do plan on doing that show on Chinese military armor, possibly even as early as next month. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for next Saturday. Now, if nobody gives me any ideas so that I can't have a poll, then maybe I might just skip next Saturday and let everyone enjoy their holiday weekend. And then we'll come back the first Saturday in December, which will be like the 6th. Yeah, hold on. Let me check my calendar down here. Yeah, December 6th. If nobody gives me any decent ideas and we can't have a poll, then I might just skip next Saturday and we'll come back in December. And maybe the first one in December will be that armor video. But I've been rambling for over 10 minutes and we haven't even really gotten started on comments yet. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to go and look over our comments. And first through the door, a whole hour early, is our very own Foxy. Welcome to the Teahouse. Please like, share, and subscribe. Next up is Carl. Good evening. Good evening, Carl. Evening, Carl. How was your day? Great. And yours? We had a pretty, she had a pretty lazy day. I got up early this morning and went and helped my mother deliver Thanksgiving boxes to underprivileged individuals. You know, it's a pretty good sized box, and it had a turkey in it, stuffing, 2.5 gallons of milk, brown sugar oatmeal, cranberry sauce. It basically had all of the ingredients to make Thanksgiving dinner. There, right there, is a bag of potatoes. That wasn't in the box. It was on top of the box because it couldn't fit in the box because the box was already full with everything else in the box. And yes, we got one too. Hi, buddy. Yes. Hello. Yes, I'm talking to people. Yes. Get down, please. Thank you. And Donna is joining us and greeting Foxy and the Witsman Dude. And greetings for Donna. And forgot the caps lock was on. Were you having a rant? Because I know, when I rant about things, I do tend to put on my caps lock because that's kind of the textual equivalent of screaming at someone. And yes, Carl posted to how to fix your YouTube name on Facebook. I did see that, but mine was okay, so I didn't really feel the need to fix it. And there's Dan. Good evening. Good evening, Dan. More greetings for Dan. Not too bad trying to get Pup to settle down. Yeah, good luck with that. Saw that. Thanks. Have to fiddle with it a bit and decide how I want my name to look because that's what it's going to look like. You can't just... I don't know why they couldn't just leave it with your handle or your one of them was display name and one of them was handle, and they decided to pick the one that's the most annoying. But that's YouTube for you, so I don't know. Can probably sense your anticipation of a show and gets excited. He does seem to go a little nuts right before the show starts, so you might actually have something there. Dog barked outside, so Charcoal went to the window to growl at him. Thankfully, being in an apartment, Inigo rarely barks. Yeah. Hooli and Remy got us in trouble once because of barking. The time where the lady downstairs was banging on with a broom handle and banging on her ceiling or having her daughter run up the stairs and knock on the door to make the dog bark, I don't count that one because she was doing it on purpose to get us in trouble. But there was one time where we went to a birthday party for Foxy's niece, and we came back and there was a noise complaint ticket on the front door. And we were able to go in and talk to the people in charge and get the fine lowered because it was a first offense. And after that, we kind of had to go and get bark collars, which I hated putting on them, but we couldn't afford to keep getting people, calling the cops on us when we weren't here for 6 to 8 hours a day. But he doesn't really seem, I don't think, he'll kind of whine and kind of but never anything louder than that. People have heard him on Creative the Play, and that's about as loud as he gets most of the time. When he does, it seems to startle him. This is true. Greetings, Dan. Remembers the dog chasing her when she lived outdoors. It's probably true. I bet. Evening all from Kitty. Evening, kitten. Greetings and greetings. Yes, that was Kitty. Yes. Told you, yeah. YouTube hijinks. Such a stupid change. You're not wrong. Probably had someone abusing the nickname privileges, or they just decided to be assholes about it. I mean, they've been changing things left and right for the last few months. I've heard they're trying to make it so it's more palatable to the mobile people, but not everyone does YouTube on their damn phones. I do it on my desktop more often than I do it on a phone or a tablet. So I don't think it needs to look or act like a mobile site. That's just dumb. And when I'm doing it on my phone, I don't go through the YouTube app. I go to a browser that has an ad blocker on it, and then I will go to the settings on my browser and go to the regular web page instead of going to the mobile site. So even when I'm doing it on my phone, I'm not doing it the mobile way. So I just think mobile is stupid and clunky. Of course, this is why we can't have nice things. You're not wrong. Probably change mine again later. Maybe add some fancy doohickeys. Fancy doohickeys. That's an industry term right there. Carl is laughing, and here we go. And Ruby is joining us. Hello, Ruby. Or greetings for Ruby, and greetings for Ruby, and greetings for Ruby. And there's our lone Twitch viewer, Midnight. Hey, Sword People. Hello, Midnight. And here's Thesis. Yep. Greetings from me. For some reason, it was muted. Well, you can mute me. It's all right. I understand. You could probably hear me from in here anyway, because I can hear myself back there with about a 3 or 4 second delay. And Houston, Texas, Dave is joining us. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Dave. And greetings for Inigo, and greetings for Dave, and greetings for Dave, and more greetings for Dave. You guys got homework? Well, yeah. Patreon sounds like work. I wouldn't call it work. I'd call it a labor of love. And we have a kickbot. Go away, kickbot. No one wants to. Wu Jiao. Okay. But Dave, you're not on the Patreon, so that doesn't count. Donna's my +1. She can do the work. She can have whoever has suggestions, whether, Dan can go ask Lindsay. I don't really care. Just, send a message to me on Patreon and we'll figure it out. Severe dogging. Well, yeah. Forget the Vib look. With my dude is getting the Aunt Donna look. Oh boy. Not the green room. Yeah. Yep. Hold on. Wait. I got that. Where's my media? Right there. Not the green room. That's okay, though. No lap left, yeah. Helping the underprivileged is a good deed. And that was kind of the idea. It was, we got a 15-pound turkey, a bag of potatoes, and I delivered 3 more of them earlier today. So I know there are at least 3 people in this county, because it wasn't just this town. It was also small towns 6 miles that direction or 6 miles that direction. And some of them even went to the next county over. So I know people. And I think I heard the organizer lady say they gave out 100 boxes today. So that alone made me kind of warm and fuzzy, knowing that there are at least 100 families in this area that are going to get a Thanksgiving dinner that might not have gotten one before. So that makes me happy. I like that idea. No rant discount code on Cigar International. Oh, well, most discount codes are all caps. Important stuff, yeah. 20% off. Of course, I had to use it. I have a couple of discount codes that are like 10% off, 50% off. I don't know if I'll be able to use them, but, of course, keep changing things at random. Things that should not be out of beta, yeah. And Dawn is joining us. Evening. Good evening, Dawn. Greetings for Dawn. Greetings for Dawn. Greetings for Dawn. Someone steal Dave's idea. Someone could use that one. And there you go, Carl. Carl can suggest Wu Zhao. That's perfectly fine. Let me... Carl, send me that on Patreon. I don't have anything to write it down with right now. So go shoot me a message really quick on Patreon. And since Rich and Joe and Trey are not here, I will send them messages on Facebook and see what they come up with. Yes, I was tongue-tied for a moment. Okay, made a note. Good deal. All right, so tonight we're going to be discussing a priestess, a wife of a king, a general, and this was someone that came up on my Facebook memories earlier this week. Yeah, blame Georgette for being late, was in super cuddle mode and couldn't. Nothing wrong with that. Both Carl and Foxy and me all agree. Aw. So, yeah, earlier this week, and I'm not 100% sure what day it was. It was like Saturday night / Sunday morning, or it was Sunday night / Monday morning, or Monday night / Tuesday morning. It came up in my Facebook memories. Inigo's also in cuddle mode. Yeah, I'm sure he is. But it was a picture, and I went ahead and cropped that picture and used it for the thumbnail for tonight's show. It's one of those history pages that I follow. And sometimes they'll bring up things that I'll think are cool, so I'll go ahead and share them. And this was one of those times. And the picture that came up is this one. Fu Hao commanded armies of up to 13,000 soldiers, a remarkable feat for a woman in ancient China, demonstrating her exceptional leadership and strategic prowess. Her well-organized and loyal forces reflect her respected status as both a general and a queen in the Shang dynasty. So that is what we are going to be discussing tonight. Fu Hao. Posthumous name, Mu Xin. Died in 1200 BCE. So this is even older than any of the other people we've already discussed. She died 1200 years before the beginning of the Common Era. The Shang dynasty was from 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE. So this is way back, before the Three Kingdoms period, before the Han dynasty. This is way back. And everything that we know about Fu Hao is entirely from the contents of her tomb. There are no literary records of this person. Everything we know is just from what was buried with her in her tomb. This tomb was unearthed in 1976. So 50 years ago, her tomb was uncovered, and they found 700 plus jade objects. Some of them were already antiques when they were buried with her. And they also found oracle bones, because she was a high priestess. She was an oracle. So they found oracle bones. She was also buried with 6 dogs and 16 human sacrifices. She was buried in a lacquered wooden coffin, which was gone by the time they found the tomb, but they were able to find traces of the wooden coffin. And they were able to find many of the things that provide insight into her life, her relationships, and her military role and her achievements. Now, archaeologically, Fu Hao was a close contemporary to King Tut. So for this reason, she has been described as the Chinese Tutankhamun. Chinese were far ahead of us historically speaking. This is true. In the Gregorian calendar, we are in the year 2025 because of the Common Era. The Gregorian calendar, as I'm sure most people here know, is based on the birth of Jesus Christ. The year 0, there is no year 0, but the year 0, the beginning of the Common Era, also known as AD or ACE, which is the one I prefer, after Common Era, is supposed to begin with the birth of Jesus. However, and I want to make sure that I'm right on this. So, no, that's not. The Chinese calendar is currently in the year 4723 because they do not begin their calendar with the birth of Jesus. They just continue. So they are many, many, many years beyond where we are historically. Except for human sacrifice. Well, yeah. Usually when you have a high-ranking military person, they're buried with attendants who are meant to, keep an eye on the body, the spirit, as it proceeds to the underworld. It's not always the best thing, but yes. So, Fu Hao was married to King Wu Ding of the Shang dynasty. he forged relationships with neighboring tribes by marrying one woman from each tribe. And one of them was Fu Hao, who was believed to be one of the king's. Now, we're going to pause here for dramatic effect. Fu Hao was one of the king's 64 wives. 64. Now, those of us who are, married or involved with one person, or for some of the lucky few, 2 or possibly 3, try to imagine, picture in your mind, 60 other people on top of the ones you already have. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, thank you. No. Very much so, yeah. Lots of places have done the whole human sacrifice. This is very true, unfortunately. Barely handle the one wife. Yeah. Chinese zodiac astrology is interesting. Yes, it is, Dave, and I might do a show on that as well. Because the Chinese zodiac is not the Western zodiac. Yes, Foxy is a boar. I am a monkey. It's not based on the month you were born. It's the year you were born. But that's not the only part of it. There's also an element tied to it. I might do an entire... You know what? Dave, hold on a second.
I'll write it down.
Yes, please, write that down for me so I can... So, yeah, 64 wives. All because this king wanted to have relationships with each neighboring tribe so that he could trade equally and travel equally without it having to worry about them being hostile towards him. Of course, that might be a double-edged sword. That might make them hostile towards him. But Fu Hao entered the royal household through one of these marriages and took advantage of the semi-matriarchal slave society to become one of the king's main consorts. She may have come from the border or from the steppe, which is basically what's now modern-day Mongolia, as suggested by the assortment of weapons in her tomb. The other 2 wives were Fu Jing and Fu Shi. Fu Jing was the primary queen, while Fu Hao was the secondary queen. Fu Hao was the mother of Prince Zhu Zhi, and inscriptions in her tomb show concern for her well-being at the time of her son's birth. Now, activities and rituals of priestesses only exist during the Shang dynasty, so some of the evidence is vague at best. But you notice all 3 of the wives, Fu Jing, Fu Shi, and Fu Hao, all share the same surname. It is believed that all of the wives were also originally priestesses who just happened to all marry the king later on. Fu Hao owned her own land and offered the king valuable tributes on many different occasions. The king had control over the ritual matters, but oracle bone inscriptions show that Wu Ding repeatedly instructed Fu Hao to conduct the most special rituals and to offer sacrifices to the ancestors. The Shang dynasty had two important activities, and that was ritual matters and battles. And Fu Hao played extraordinary roles in both at various times. Fu Hao is only known to modern scholars from inscriptions on oracle bone artifacts unearthed at her tomb. From these inscriptions and from the presence of weapons, it can be determined that she was a general in charge of several military campaigns. She would have been mostly responsible for conquering enemies and neighbors of the Shang dynasty, including the Tufang that fought against the Shang for generations until they were defeated by Fu Hao in one single decisive battle. Other campaigns were against the Yi, the Qiang, and the Ba. And the Ba is remembered for being the earliest recorded large-scale ambush in Chinese history. Fu Hao, like the picture mentioned, had up to 13,000 soldiers and generals serving under her, which would have made her the most powerful general of her time. This status would have been considered highly unusual because, as we know, women in most of the ancient world were not considered to be the highest echelon of people, with the exception, Donna, of the Norse. A lot of women were considered lower than the men. So having someone like Fu Hao being the most powerful general of the dynasty would have been considered highly unusual, and yet in her tomb there were giant battle axes, there were chariots, there were lots and lots of weapons unearthed in her tomb that would have confirmed her being a very powerful general. A lot of food, probably good ideas, yeah. Gonna guess that this situation was not unlike in the Middle East, where kings had wives for political reasons, like treaties, some of them being ladies the king never even met. You're probably not wrong, but again, we don't have a lot of literary sources here. We're going entirely based on the king's tombs and the tombs of the generals. So it's entirely possible that the king rode into a neighboring village, a neighboring tribe, asked the head of that tribe for a tribute of a wife, and the tribe would send one of their women with the king, and the king would go, and that would be, his slave. We don't really have a whole lot of information on the hows and the whys and things like that. So this is entirely based just on the contents of tombs. But you're probably not wrong on that, Dan. Now, Full House achievements on their own were very unique, but during this time period, there were other women that were also active in military roles. So, this far back in history, there were more women active in the military. Just like the presence of military weapons in Fu Jing's tomb leads us to believe that she was active in the military, there are other women that were buried with military weapons and equipment that make you also believe that they were active in military roles. Oracle bones show records of at least 600 women participating in the military during the Shang Dynasty. So let's take just Full House possible 13,000 soldiers. If you consider that all of those soldiers in her command, there were probably at least some of them were also women. 600 women participating in a military in the Shang Dynasty. It doesn't sound like a lot. 600 women compared to 13,000 soldiers, and that's just one unit. That's just one unit under one general. But you have to take into account, and yes, Dan, you have lots of moments of insight. You have to take into account that women were not to the same level socially as men even 3,000 years ago. So having that many women in the Shang military would have also been considered fairly unique and impressive. Now, there's not a whole lot else that we can talk about her as a person, because, again, we only have the records from her tomb, which I'm going to bring. Wow, that picture is garbage. Let's see if we can find a better one. Yeah, wouldn't want several hundred angry women attacking me. Yeah. There was a Chinese drama that I watched. Yes, you would. Well, that depends on your definition of attacking. But there was a Chinese drama that I watched a while back. It was possibly earlier this spring or even possibly last winter. But there was a character that was, she wasn't the main character of the drama, but she was my favorite character. Let's go ahead and bring this up. It was called New Life Begins. And it was kind of a similar thing. You know, you had a royal, in this case it was a prince, and this kingdom had several kingdoms around it, and every year all of the kingdoms around this main kingdom would send one of their daughters to marry a prince. And these were always arranged marriages, like Dan said, where you didn't have a lot of meetings between the prince and the wives. But in this case, it was one prince and one wife. The king had lots of sons. So every year, the neighboring kingdom would send a daughter to marry a prince. But there was a character in the show that was from a matriarchal kind of society where the women were the ones in power. And she was married to one of the princes that was not very bright, we'll say. And she was my favorite character out of the entire show. And she carried with her a spear. But it was a fantasy spear because it was an extendable spear. She carried it on her hip like a sword. And then when it was time to fight, she would just pull it apart until it was a spear length. And yeah, I'm trying to find, because I can't remember the name of the character. I can't find it, and it's kind of pissing me off. But she was my favorite character in the show, and she wasn't the main character. But it was called New Life Begins, and it was a very, very excellent Chinese drama. It was kind of sappy because you had the romance elements and all that, but it was a good show. I enjoyed it. So now we are going to bring up this picture of Full House Tomb. Yeah, that's definitely one way to go. You're not wrong. So this is a museum display of Full House Tomb. You can see some of the treasures, braziers, bones. You can't see much here, but it's definitely a glimpse into just what one room of her tomb would look like. We don't know, at least not from any of the information I found, the cause of death. But she was buried in a tomb on her own land across the river from the main royal cemetery, even though usually the royal families were buried together. She died well before the king, who constructed her tomb himself. And because of its location, Full House Tomb is the only royal tomb to have been left unnoticed and unlooted. So you had very, very unique insights into her life and the burial practices of that time. The king himself later made many sacrifices there in hopes of receiving guidance in defending the attacking Gong dynasty, who threatened to wipe out the Shang dynasty completely. This shows the king's favor towards Fu Hao after her death, and he had her married spiritually to the 3 greatest Shang kings before him. This tomb, as we said, was found in 1976 and is now open to the public. The tomb itself was only 18 by 13 foot pit that contains a smaller 16 foot, 11 foot, and 4.3 foot wooden structure inside. And that smaller pit was packed with the sacrifices and the wealth and everything else that was buried with her. She was buried with a large quantity of weapons that signified her important military status, since only warriors and generals were buried with such objects during that time period. She was also buried with hundreds of bronze, jade, bone, and stone objects, such as figurines, vessels, mirrors, many of which were considered rare objects from around the kingdom. And because her tomb laid undisturbed for probably around 2,500 years, the objects found in her tomb are some of the best preserved from that time period. There were sacrificial bronze vessels and tortoise shells discovered in her tomb that were inscribed with her name that give further evidence of her status as a high priestess and an oracle. And as was the custom during the Shang Dynasty, she was buried with 16 human sacrifices and 6 dogs to prepare the way for her to the underworld. And despite the fact that her lacquered wooden coffin had disintegrated, her body itself was discovered fully intact. So that alone is pretty impressive. Now, the list of the contents of her tomb. In total, she was buried with 755 jade objects. Now, we're going to stop here for a minute. Jade was highly, highly prized. It still is to this day. It's considered a stone of protection. And during ancient time periods, it was very, very rare for someone other than a royal or a person of high status to have one piece of jade. To be buried with 755 jade objects, the amount of money that a single person could make from just one of those objects, let alone all of them, would have made this tomb, if it had been known and looted, that alone, just the 755 jade objects, could have made one person well, maybe not the richest, but probably would definitely elevate their status in terms of having money. So 755 jade objects, 564 bone objects, including 500 hairpins and 20 arrowheads, 468 bronze objects, including 130 weapons, 23 bells, 27 knives, 4 mirrors, and 4 tigers or tiger heads, 63 stone objects, 5 ivory objects, 11 pottery objects, 7,000 pieces of shell, which was currency at the time, and then the 16 human sacrifices and 6 dogs. The bronze objects were because bronze at that time was what weapons were made of. This is before the Iron Age, people. 1200 BCE. So that's why the bronze objects, including 130 weapons, including, and a partridge in a pear tree. You're not wrong. This bronze knife with a ring pommel. It looks similar to a, I want to make sure I'm saying this right. A G, which is it's considered to be a Chinese pole arm, but the ring pommel kind of gives it away that it's a knife, as does the guard right here. Let me see if I can find a picture of what I'm talking. I know where I can find a picture of one, but there is a particular Chinese pole arm. Yes, it is called a Ji. And we can share this picture. It kind of reminds me of this, which is a G. This is the G. It also has the spearhead on top. But since it doesn't have a perpendicular blade, there's the single halberd that I still love. If I go here, LK Chen actually has a G. Just the blade itself. If you want the haft with it, this piece doesn't come with it. You have to buy that separate. But the blade itself, you can see you have one blade, and then you have another one kind of horizontal. It reminds me of a tonfa. Everyone remembers my my Teahouse with Sifu Cuddle. He put them on shorter halves and used them as like basically double axes, or used them as hand weapons. Personally, I would have wrapped this blade instead of over here and basically used it like a tonfa, which in Chinese martial arts is called a crutch. But that dagger reminds me of a Hanji, which again is the Han Dynasty, which is 1,000 years later. Yeah. But that's it. That is all the information we have about Fu Hao. So, Dan, since Carl already gave me his suggestion, Dan, I want you to do some research tonight. And I want you to find a female Chinese folk hero that you are interested in learning more about. I want you to send me a message about this woman. I will send a Facebook message to Rich and Joe and Trey. We will get their suggestions, and then I will put up a poll. And the poll will go as long as it needs to go. I usually make my links for the Saturday show on Wednesday night. However, I can wait up until Friday night for the poll to get enough votes. And I might even put the poll up on Facebook or somewhere else so that everyone can vote on the poll. Because I want to know who I should do the show on next Saturday. Now, again, if no one is interested enough, then I will skip next Saturday and we'll come back in December. But that is, it was good info. It was interesting kind of doing a little bit of a deep dive. Because like I said, this entire month has been all people that I didn't know about until I found them. You know, we had Liang Qinyu, we had Qin Liangyu, we have Fu Hao. So, you know, I was going to do a little bit more about Wu Zetian, the first Chinese empress, the only Chinese empress. But I did talk about her on that that show I did about Chinese women of history. Oh yeah, the Patreon link is just Patreon. Hold on, let me go ahead and do that. Make sure this is the right one because I don't want to send you the wrong place. Oh, excuse me. Yes, that is the right. There you go. There's the Patreon link. Already thought of one empress, but you'd have to do the show in the green room because, well, you know. Archaeology is interesting, kind of like historical psychology. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Might have been Japanese. Well, can be fascinating, yes. Chinese astrology, Foxy is a boar, other she's a Virgo. There is the Patreon link. And there are free. You can join the Patreon for free now, I guess. Because there's a button that says join for free, so you wouldn't even have to pay to join the Patreon. So if anybody, like Dave, if you want to go join my Patreon for free and make another suggestion, feel free to do so. I don't really care. But I will try and put the poll up once I have more information. And we will see what happens next Saturday. But that is all for tonight. I will be back here in 2 days for another Nine Dragons play stream. I haven't heard for sure if there's going to be a Creative to Play on Wednesday. And if you don't see me there next Saturday, and if not then, I will be back right here on December 1st for another Nine Dragons play stream. So, 3 days a week, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. You can usually see me, or at least hear me, on YouTube, Kick, Twitch. Have a nice evening. Night all. Night everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm glad that we were able to at least do a little bit of information on someone that I had never heard of before. Well, I'd obviously heard of her a year ago earlier this week, but I didn't do any extensive research until this week. So it was nice. Night for Midnight over on Twitch. Nighty night from Kitty. Great info, great show. Thank you, Dawn. Good night from Dan. I will be back Monday. If you don't see me Monday, you might see me on Wednesday or next Saturday. And if you don't see me then absolutely I will be back right here for another Nine Dragons play stream starting in December. Words are hard. And night from Ruby. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Thorns Gorving. And yes, the face has to go with it. I don't know why, but every time I say it, the face has to go. Thorns Gorving. Yes, the face is part of it. Yes, words can be very hard. So have a wonderful Thorns Gorving. And I will see you all next time. 再见。